Step by step you made it to step 6. By this point you may think you know my story, but this is the step it gets interesting. You see, there's a fine line between sanity and insanity, because most of you are sane, or at least think of yourselves as sane, even though some of you believed in Albert Einstein's dynamic or dark universe. So there is a fine line between being sane and being insane. So for the sake of argument, let's say reality is real. Therefore, you can verify every fact in his story. Although I do see many alternate realities going on here, I do not see any multiverses or signs of time travel. No curvatures of space and time caused by black holes. But what I do see can be verified if it's true. But it cannot be debunked without scientifically proving it's not. But that is what sheeple are good at, which is putting people down with no good reason. It's mean and cruel, but that is how sheeple are. I defend the static universe as I do his story, and like Isaac Newton, I do not like it when anyone disagrees with me. The warrior in me comes out, and I am ready to fight. PTSD is a real bitch on days that sheeple do not believe in his story I tell. So pay attention to what I say and how I said it, because I would not say anything that was not true. That's called honor, and that requires integrity, as if anyone knows what these spells even mean nowadays. So if you disagree with me, that is fine. Just do not tell it to me, because I do not care what you believe, nor does the universe. Because the way I see things is through a wizard's eye. That means you must have an IQ over 180 to disagree with me. And like Sir Isaac Newton before me, I believe that God is the force in all my equations. So the way I figure it is like God's son. I was born in the light of Corona at 3666 1/2 Valley View, just north of Corona in Norco. So I knew there was light in me, and I also knew there can be no light without the darkness. And being born an Ashkenazi Jew, my family hid their heritage in Judeo-Christianity by removing the words Judeo to become good Christians, thus hiding the Jew in them. And since they have been doing this for centuries now, they have become very good at hating Jews for doing this. But seeing how both of my grandfathers were military men and high-ranking Masons, it was clear my family had a lot more secrets to hide. And if you ever want to hide something, hide it in plain sight. So numbers have hidden meanings. As a child conceived in 1960, it was clear at an early age that I was autistic. And being born with autism is just another dark secret my family kept. But autism is a dirty word in my family. So I like to be called an Aspie, which is named after Hans Asperger, and where the name for Asperger syndrome comes from. And since I had a high IQ, this made me a wizard, because it took all three. So an Ashkenazi Aspie with a high IQ who knows how the universe actually works is what I call a wizard. Not as in the mythical fairy tales, even though some of those were based on true stories. These wizards are real people in history, and since the last wizard to be born was back in the 1700s, I inherited all the secrets of the Masonic Order from my first cousin, 5 times removed, and 5 points makes a star, and my cousin Isaac Newton was a star. And not only did I get the collective work and notes from all the greatest wizards in time, I inherited a copy of the real Bible that Sir Isaac Newton wrote about. And since he was a descendant of Jesus, who like myself was also a wizard, I inherited the knowledge of how to interpret them, since they were all written by wizards like myself. They said that everything that ever happened was a grand plan that God created when creating the universe, and this grand plan included me, as it also included you. But you and I do not see things the same way. You only see the world through emotions, and I do not have any emotions. And I am not talking about me, because in the light, there are no emotions. But as for me, my dark side has plenty of emotions, so I and me are in balance. Whereas the story I tell may sound out of control, you may have to remember that this is God's grand plan, and not mine. And God can see the whole universe, so his story is the big picture, and my part in it is just a bit part, because I'm just a messenger, and you are just a sheep. I cannot remember the day I was born, but I do remember the day John F. Kennedy was murdered in 1963. He was a wizard who tried to take back the United States of America from the banks who owned it by printing money for the government. The banks killed him, as they have countless wizards before him, like the Dark Wizard named Lincoln, who was executed for treason back in 1863 for selling us back into slavery with the banks. And you have to wonder if this too was God's grand plan, because the Bible is very clear that the light can not interfere with your free will, but the darkness will tell you half-truths to deceive you, and the line between good and evil is drawn in shades of gray. So to live in the light, you would have to cut off the darkness, so you can measure it with a micrometer, mark it in chalk, and cut it off with a chainsaw, if it was not for the fact that the line is very blurry, and you never know where the light leads off into the darkness. And the Bible said that God is all light and no darkness. It also states there can be no light without the darkness. So my grandfather said it was up to me to bring balance back to the world, as if this was God's grand plan. And after reading the Bible, I had to agree with him. So this is his story, told by the Light Wizzard in the flesh. Growing up, I had to prepare for a battle, knowing that the war would come for me if I did not bring the battle to it. So as a child, I had to imagine how I would do such a task. I mean, how can one man take on the whole world? So into my imagination I went, armed with the knowledge of countless wizards before me, because I never die. I am just reborn. So my mind envisioned the White Wizard, who was an old white man with long white hair and a beard to match. He would come to me in my dreams any time I needed him. And being born with an autistic, schizoaffective brain, I built my whole world around the things that the White Wizard told me. And he told me everything. Growing up, I learned to tell my father about my dreams, because after my mother died in 1963, at the age of 19, my dad remarried a woman named Aloha, and she told me that if I tell people stories about imaginary friends, that they would have me locked up in some prison for the mentally insane. But my dad had other plans for me. So when I turned 6, he asked me if I wanted to go to a dog fight with him. And being able to do anything alone with my dad was great as a kid. But little did I know that me and the dog was going to be the main event, where the adults would bet on which boy and dog tied together by a leash would cross the line drawn on the floor of some dirty country barn out in the boonies, where the dogs would tear each other apart unless the boys could break it up. Oh, this is my dad's idea of having fun. But to make it funner, my father had me smoke cannabis and drink beer like a real man. That way, I would be stoned out of my mind, trying to keep the 2 dogs from killing themselves, as well as trying to kill me. But this is my father's way of preparing me for this battle, by making me stoned out of my mind and meaner than a junkyard dog. My stepmother had her own plan on how to prepare me for this battle. After she interrogated me to find out where my dad was taking me and what he did, she slapped me so hard on both sides of my head that both of my ears were bleeding, then told everyone that I stuck a long piece of wire that were used by cars to find curbs into my ears. It was her way of kicking me into the curbs, I guess. But no one ever wondered why I was always covered in bruises, cuts, and bite marks. Because I was a boy who was clumsy and always getting into fights. Boys will be boys. But from that time forward, I never knew she was going to hit me or hug me when she called me over. And she had a very dark side. She would take so many drugs that she could not walk, and I would have to help her and clean up after her. I was her personal slave, and when she was mad at my father, she took it out on me. And then I got to hear how much she just wanted to commit suicide, and I had to make sure she did not, because she was my mother, and the word step had little meaning at that point in my life, because I loved my mother and honored my parents and grandparents. I never spoke ill of them to anyone, nor am I now. I am just telling it like it was, because they were the ones teaching me the meaning of life, at the cost of their own. But the battle between my stepmother and I was not over yet. So when my father got back on heroin, she left him, and she remarried a man named Merlin, who I thought of like a wizard. And I went to live with them with my little sister and stepbrother and sister. And on the day my stepmother told me she threw all my treasures away, just so she could use the box they were stored in, so she could pack her stuff in when they moved. She taught me a lesson in life I will never forget, and that is that there are worse things to lose than treasure. But I had to follow her to the store one night to learn this lesson, and she pushed me to the ground and yelled at me that all the books in the world would not help me to win this battle, because no one will ever believe those books and papers she threw out. Because it's up to Jeffrey Scott Fletcher to set the world right, as she used sarcasm that it mostly escapes me since I take everyone literally. So she said, go tell the world about all your dreams and see if any of them believe you, or if they will just lock you up. Then she turned around, and without looking both ways before crossing a road, she never made it to the other side alive. So in shock, I ran home and hid under the covers like a little boy. And instead of the 14-year-old teenager who was not ready to own up to his responsibilities. I kept this secret buried down deep inside until it rotted my very soul, for reasons even I do not understand. Was I protecting my stepsisters and brother from their delusions of our mother being a goddess? Or was it out of shame for not protecting my mother when she was drugged up and in one of her suicidal moods? The truth is that we all have our dirty little secrets we hide from the world, and telling them is never much fun. But that was only part of the battle I had to look forward to, because my life was like me, not normal. So step by step, his story unfolds. I learned in school how to behave like normal people known as neurotypicals or NTs, which I call sheep, because they believe they are the animal and not I, the light being. So school is really about learning to behave like sheeple, and also due to their IQ, which was normally around 100, which compared to my 180, this meant that sheeple are stupid. Being somewhat clumsy at sports and other activities, I had to work harder. And having asthma due to my poor diet was no help. And knowing the truth about the universe was more of a hindrance than help. Because at school, they wanted you to learn lies and be able to repeat those lies. And I never was interested in lies, so I made no effort to learn them. I would never do my homework, yet I would ace most tests if I really wanted to. And when they tested my IQ and found it to be 180, they wanted to do more testing to see if I was autistic. Because it's not normal to have an IQ over 133 unless you are autistic. But my father would not allow that, because once people know you have autism, you are branded for life. No one will ever believe you, because they will think you are schizophrenic. And having an imaginary friend will just prove that. But like my father before me, I am a Jew, and no one hates Jews more than the Jews do. So I grew up agnostic or even downright atheist, because the God I believed in was from the science of the static universe, and not some deity. So I was not about to pretend to be normal and go along with all the lies. But I hid the wizard from the world and told no one but the ones I truly trusted. Because I knew from experience that once I tell anyone I am a Jew, they would stop being my friend. And if I told anyone I was a wizard, well, they would laugh at me and tell me I'm crazy. So I learned a lot at school, but none of it was what they were teaching me. Instead, it was what I learned on my own. And I was all alone. I was the only wizard. One thing I did learn in school was that bullies would prey on people like me, who never wanted to play with the other children, so it was best to blend in. But even that was not enough, because I was smart, and everyone in school thought they were the smartest one in school, so they hated me. So I learned to act stupid just like you. And I found one way to stop the bullies, 'cause me and my little sister had a plan. When they picked on her, I would fight them. And a fight is what I gave the bully, as I pounded his arrogance into the ground with my foot in their mouth. Then I learned that this did not always have the effect I was looking for. In fact, it normally backfired on me, because the bullies would see me as the bully. And the bullies ganged up on me one day, and that they would teach me another lesson. But that day is when I learned that I could kill someone very easy, and almost did so in anger. But something stopped me, and I never fought again. I learned another way to deal with bullies, but never forgot how to kill someone if I really needed to. My father taught me well. Years of dog fights and street fights, but drunked out gambling fools like my father taught me how to fight and win at all costs. And that bully was buried deep down inside me. Yet just another secret to eat away at my soul. By the time I got out of high school, my dreams had only just begun. I was in the militia. I fit in so well that I thought this was my destiny. And I quickly rose in rank till I was the highest ranking officer in the militia of the United States of America, under the Constitution. The only problem was that the United States was not under the Constitution anymore. In fact, it has not had a Constitution since 1863, when the 16th President Lincoln sold it back to the same bank that my grandfathers, who sailed from Germany in 1752 on board the Phoenix, fought for our independence from years later in 1776. So this militia was illegal under the laws of the bank. Yet its military still swears to defend and protect the Constitution, which is very ironic, since they would have to arrest everyone in the country for treason to do so. So this was a paradox the militia had to work out. And only history can judge if this plan was in fact God's grand plan. Because the mark of the beast in chapter 13 might be the address I was born into. 3666. But the sixes do not stop here. They just started there. But that is reading into things. But that is what Aspies do. They take everything literally. And since Sir Isaac Newton was also an Ashkenazi Aspie with a high IQ, making him a wizard. He was born on Christmas Day in 1642, and said his birth date was moved to 4 January 1643 to make way for a new calendar, and then they threw out 10 days, which made the date the next wizard would be born on 14 January, which is my birthday. And I was born into the flesh, and go by that very name, since it's legally my last name. So history will have a hard time getting past people like me, and history is about to be changed back to telling the truth, instead of telling the lies of the bankers, just to keep their sheep under control. As a child, I made other friends, as we sat down to play wizard games at our annual Renaissance Fair. We took an oath to take back our Constitution, but it would cost us a lot, since national debt already means that the banks own the world at this point. Our plans had to include a way to take it back without civil war, which is what got us into this mess to begin with. So we gave this group a name and called it the Admiralty, and we would be the admirals at the end of this era and set the world back into balance by teaching sheeple the truth in the Bible, which is that money is the root of all evil, and to prepare for the Ice Age. But we also realized that the Constitution was not worth saving, since it did not mean enough to its citizens to even protect, let alone defend. So our goal became sanctuary, and it's something you cannot fight for, because you have to live to be free. So this battle is not to be a bloody one. Secrets and secret societies are part of the world culture, and the mystery that surrounds each of these groups are legendary. But this group is the best kept secret in the history of the world. I know all the secrets in the universe. It comes down to just one secret, and that is that we are I am. It sounds better when you say that word while looking into a mirror, because only then does the phrase that God created us in His image make any sense. Because I is the light, and me, well, that is just meat. So it's the flesh, and I am the flesh. So the secret was in the messenger, and sanctuary was the message that the Admirals was going to tell. But first it had to execute its plan, which is to break the banks. And believe me, we broke them. So it's time that the wizards come forth and tell you who they are, because it's not my place to tell you who they are. Most of you can guess, but until you hear it from their lips, do not believe anything you hear about it, because seeing is believing. So you need to see this to believe it. So everything I say will someday be proven. That is, when the secret is out of the bag. And this bag is in a box, Pandora's box, and it's in a closet. So it's time to come out of the closet. The Bible states that God will give you a sign, and there have been many signs that God has given. But most of you do not believe in God, not the true God I am, which is the science of God, and not the deity. Like Sir Isaac Newton said, God is the force in all my equations. So go figure. Like I already told you, his story is about science. Seeing God's particle is seeing God at work. But God is every atom in the universe, and there is only one God, the God of light and the God of darkness. And I am every shade of gray in between. So this is my sign. His story is about the dreams I have, where signs can take the form of numbers and patterns which weave their way into my life. But dreams took on a whole new story after I joined the United States military. After arriving at my first station with the 366 Avionics Squadron at Mountain Home Air Force Base, where I also served on the Honor Guard, when one day I got a note from the Admiralty. It was addressed to Admiral Jeffrey Scott Plesher. When the military courier delivering it to me had a curious look in his eye when he said, "I have a message for Admiral Plesher." He said, "You are the only Jeffrey Scott Plesher in the Air Force, so I was instructed to deliver it to you, Airman Plesher, regardless of the rank it is addressed to." And I said, "That is for me." And without missing a beat, I said, "I was prior military before joining the Air Force," which was the truth, and I always tell the truth. But the courier just laughed and said, "Right," and asked me to sign the receipt and walked away. The note was written in talk around, a code we used to send messages to each other. It just said, "It starts now." So it was time for me to become a warrior. So I proved I was the best shot by winning the M16 Marksmanship Medal for excellence in competition, which less than 1% of all military ever get awarded. So it's so rare that even most military members never heard of it before. But it is the only medal authorized by Congress that you can wear on all uniforms, making it the most valuable to me to be awarded. is also the most prestigious medal on any uniform, because you actually have to perform like a warrior and get the highest marks. In a fast-paced shooting match with hundreds of other military members who think they are the best shot. I also got a medal for meritorious service, which, as a computer programmer, I was able to improve the system reliability by 30%, which made the system available a year ahead of time, and allowed the F-111 to be the primary aircraft that flew over 96% of all sorties during the Gulf War. So I can say the Gulf War was my responsibility. So I took that responsibility serious. I got my college degree like a good schoolboy. But at the same time, I was in a very bad marriage and had 2 red-headed daughters who had Satan for grandfathers on their mother's side of the family. But that is my life up to this point. If you think that I'm arrogant, instead of just stating facts, you have a lot to learn about who I am, because I am an Aspie, and my schizoaffective personality blends in very well with my high IQ. So it's the mark of a truly autistic person, and it runs in my family. Even Isaac Newton had Jesus syndrome, so I inherit it also, as well as his story itself. So this is where his story will take you.
Light Wizzard in the flesh will now define I am in step 6. From the viewpoint of the light side, in terms the dark side can understand. In the November of 1990, just before the Gulf War, like others, I got a series of vaccinations in preparation to be deployed. But the anthrax vaccine made me feel real sick, like I got the flu that would never go away. And I ended up with what most call Gulf War syndrome. Only I had it before everyone started talking about it, so I figured I had something else. Mostly because that is what the Air Force doctors told me to believe. And since no one could even tell me what it is, and no 2 people described it the same way, so I had no reason to believe I even had it at the time. But its effects were just starting to seep into my life by the time I was deployed to Kuwait. But the war was far from over. In fact, for me, it was just starting. At first my dreams became nightmares, and then the unthinkable happened to me. I could not differentiate my dreams from reality. I started dreaming I was awake. The doctors tagged me as schizoaffective, but ruled out schizophrenia, since I knew what reality was. After the Gulf War of 1990, I cross-trained from being an F-111 computer test station technician, which was an electronic engineer and computer programmer wrapped up in one job, to an H-60 helicopter crew chief for the 66th Air Rescue Squadron at Nellis Air Force Base. My dreams got way out of control, and the lines between light and dark were in shades of gray that looked like mud to me. Most people had no idea what the Gulf War was all about, But if you think it was about killing slaves, known as Third Country Nationalists or TCNs, that would become citizens of Kuwait after 3 generations of slave labor to the Kuwaitis that lasted from 1960 to 1990. So it's also known as the 30-Year War. So if you knew this, then you would be right. But this was not a Masonic secret. In fact, it was not even a secret. The results of the war prove that. But that is how Sheeple view the world. If you do not hear those words come from the president's lips on mainstream news, then you do not believe it, nor would you believe anything I have to say. So his story is not for the sheeple, it's just for history told by wizards. The first sign that my dreams and reality were breaking down was on the day that I dreamed I was flying on a rescue mission which retrieved 7 bodies that were reported as being stuck in mud, which come to find out later was actually a substance that the TCNs used to transfer oil in the pipelines. It had some biological organism in it that kept the oil from solidifying. But any human contact is real harmful. Too much can kill you. A little can cause long-term neuropathy and other skin conditions which can lead to skin and bone cancer and rashes. Knowing this now, it seems like we would have been dressed in hazmat suits instead of the PDUs we were wearing. But we thought it was just mud, and not some acronym for a 32-character chemical compound. But after retrieving the bodies, we took small arms fire from an offshore boat. I could feel the bullets rip through the helicopter. Then we were stuck in the crossfire coming from the pumping station where we landed, and the boat that was firing at us, only armed with 50 caliber machine guns. We called in for an airstrike, and we took off in a hurry. In the distance I saw the oil platform near the boat explode, and after the flash of light, the boat was gone. But so was the platform. By the time we got back to the base, I was told to get some rest, and we would repair the damaged helicopters in the morning. But in the morning when I searched for bullet holes and found none on any of the aircraft, I thought that someone was playing a joke on me. Then I remembered I was not in any of these aircraft. Come to think of it, I could not remember who was on the crew with me. Then I searched for records of the 7 bodies we retrieved and could not find any records of them. So my head started spinning, and it's never stopped to this date. It feels like vertigo, like I was standing still, but the earth was spinning around me. I found myself writing a report about something that everyone denies ever happened. So my sanity was being questioned. But I learned to go along with things and see how they play out. So I acted like they were dreams to the doctors and real with everyone else, because the doctors would have declared me insane, and everybody else already knew that, because they knew these stories sound too crazy to be true. But sometimes believing things are true. It's just different levels between dreams and reality. Maybe the truth is just somewhere in between the shades of gray. One night I had a dream about a snake visiting me. It told me to meet a man in a coffee shop who would tell me the truth. But before it finished talking, I was awakened by gunfire. which I quickly found out that a military security guard opened up fire on a King Cobra that was next to my trailer, and it slithered under it and got away. Seems like this was around Christmas before New Year's. The order of events get confusing to me. My memory is not stored chronologically. Instead, it's just a massive amount of random memories clumped together and held in place by the threads of dialogue. So it's just a series of images, feelings, and senses that make up memories. And it's really just the way I remember it from the last time I remember it. So it's constantly changing, because my mind tries to run that memory like it was a video recording, rewinding, do-overs, and all kinds of video editing is taking place, so that my mind can deal with what happened. And this event turned into a recurring dream or nightmare, in which the snake would tell me even more dark deeds done by the Darkside. Soon I found myself in Kuwait, at what would be called a mall back at home, when the prayer alarm went off. This is a very loud speaker system set up around the country. It meant prayer time, and the shop doors slammed down as everyone inside was pushed out of the shops like sheep. As we headed for an exit, a man stopped me and said, "Come with him for a cup of coffee until after prayer." I did not hesitate. I grabbed the other sergeants and airmen that were with me, and we ducked into this rug shop, and he dropped the doors down and locked them. And then he served us Turkish coffee and told us many stories about the war. One was about a reporter who was killed trying to escape the country with evidence that the TCNs were being murdered, so that they could not become citizens. And that night I found myself in another mission. This one led me to the oil fields not too far from the base. The oil fires were so bright it lit up the night sky. There I saw sheeple in trucks uploading bodies into piles where oil was dumped on them, and their bodies were burned. Our job was to collect evidence. I was given a bag and special cutters designed to cut cables, but they cut off fingers real easy. And I was told to cut off the index finger of as many adults as possible in the time we had. After tagging them and filling a few bags, the fear of cutting off my own fingers in haste crept into me. We had pictures, IDs, and physical evidence. Fingers with fingerprints to match the IDs and pictures. We gave them to a reporter. The next day at work, I heard about a reporter who was found dead outside the border of Kuwait. To this day, I do not know if this was a nightmare or a memory that was planted there by the man in the coffee shop. Or was it the snake? Another time I found myself at a camel race. We got to meet many Kuwaitis and even a dozen Iraq Republican guards. Each one of them told me about the reporter. And that night I found myself on another mission. This time we flew in a Russian helicopter all the way into Iraq, where we were taken to see Saddam Hussein. With me was the crew from the last mission, and the 12 Iraqi Republican guards I met at the camel race. We were taken to a room where prisoners were interrogated and beheaded. The interrogation was short, since he already knew who I was and what I was doing there. What he found amusing is that I showed up there of my own free will, thinking I could get him to change his ways. He told me I was wasting my time and his, because the 30-year war would continue in 2020. And in hindsight, I knew that was going to be true. So I told him that I would not allow this any longer. It's time to change your old ways and embrace sanctuary. He laughed at me and said,
Wizards never learn. The infidel must die.
So I said, fine, and allow me to die with honor. So I got into position over the chopping block and rested my head in the cradle and told him there is no need to strap me in, because if I move or tense the muscle in my neck the slightest, the blade will have a hard time cutting through my spinal cord and will result in a very painful death. So let's get this over with as easy as possible. You know that I believe I am God, and will only be reborn as your children if you kill me, which is why you are always at war with your children. He laughed and said,
Do you have any last requests before my men cut your head off?
And I said, just one, as I stood up and said, I want you to die with honor. Saddam looked at me with a strange tone in his voice, as if he did not understand what I just said to him. And he said,
You must be joking.
No, I said, you see, these are my men. It was then he realized he did not recognize any of the faces in the room. He yelled,
Gods!
I said to him, who do you think let us in here? I have one question for you. Where is the football? He said.
I do not know what you are talking about.
I said the nuke in a suitcase and other weapons of mass destruction. He said,
Oh, those things. Well, that is a long story.
I reminded him how many fingers, toes, feet, hands, and arms he had. And that is not even where I will start. So, your options are not very good once we start down that road. He said,
What makes you think I will tell you the truth?
I said, you know my resolve. You know what I think God is, and you know I believe I am the God of fertility. So I'll make sure you are reborn an insect that feeds off the shit of animals for the rest of eternity. And this is that part of his story where most sheeple think I'm joking. But not Saddam. He knew the truth, and he believed in the prophecy. So I told him that I already know where it is. What I want to know is why it's there, and for you to repent for your sins, which started when your ancestors destroyed the Great Pyramids instead of building them as the Bible told you to, and then changed the Bible into a religion to control the sheeple, because only Satan lies about what God is, since God is the light. And that light is in everyone, and everything that God created. And this is your judgment day. I made a deal with your son today. It's up to him and your clone to change your old ways now. If you do not, Israel will sick its dogs of war on your whole country. And you know I am just the messenger. And you know what the message is, which is to build sanctuary. So if you want to ascend, and redimension, you must die with honor. So it's up to you, because I am on a mission to bring balance to this world. Your job is to choose what side you are on, the light side or dark side. After they cut off his head, they stuck it in a jar and filled it with a liquid preservative, sealed it, put it in a helmet bag, and we left. A while later, I was on another mission, this time to retrieve the football that was on its way to Damascus in Syria. The battle there was masked by the violence that takes place there all the time, so we got in and out of there without much problem, which actually meant it was an all-out battle that left many sheeple dead. After my tour in Kuwait was up, I was on a plane back home, being checked by airport security when one of the idiots searching my civilian bags opened up my personal bag, which was used to store my shaver, toothbrush, and had a plastic container that had my mouth guard in it, and he opened it and dropped it on the ground. It was then that I lost my temper. After all that I've been through, this is what upset me. I led into this idiot with every foul word I could think of. It was clear I had Tourette's syndrome. Then I punched him in the bridge of his nose and yelled at him as he went down. Then made fun of him crying like a little baby, saying that if I wanted to hide something I would just put it in my military bag because you could not search it. And I can put anything in it, guns and grenades. I might as well have yelled bomb, because every security guard in the place came running to see what the problem was. Long story short, was that I was held in a room until a high-ranking officer showed up to collect me. After a short lecture on protocol, the officer asked what was so important about my mouth guard. I told him about my temporomandibular joint disease, or TMJ, and told him that it will be years before I can get a new one. He said,
Go to dental. You have full coverage. Do not freak out about such a trivial problem as this.
But I was right. I just now got a new one, 18 years later. Now, he said,
What do you have for me?
Look at my helmet bag and see for yourself. As he did, oh, was all he said. It looks just like him. But so did the 5 before this one. I said that means you only have one more to go. He just laughed and said, Let's go home, Admiral. I said, After you, Admiral. And I was allowed to enter the U.S. and return home to Nellis Air Force Base. I was not home long before getting orders to go to Korea, where I would be an H-53 helicopter crew chief for the Black Knights, 31st Special Operations Squadron, where my mission to find footballs became an obsession, which led me around the world and into situations I felt I had no way out of, and battles against pedophilia rings that were being run by using a church as a front. So by the time I got leave after being there half a year, I was tired and sick of war, only to find out that my first wife of that time had allowed her pedophile father to get a hold of my oldest daughter, which was about 13 years old at the time, and who was now talking about suicide. So I never got a break. I went from one drama to the next, not knowing what was real and what was just a dream. So the whole tour ended up being a nightmare. And to top it off, I broke my back in an accident. And did not even know it till I broke it again a year later after returning home. So I really did not have a good time in the military, because I lost track over what was real and what was a dream. And that is never much fun, no matter who you are. Because in my mind, I knew these things seemed real. So real that no one will ever convince me that they did not happen. Because the PTSD attacks that go with these memories are real. And all reality is just memories. And traumatic memories are more intense, which accounts for the spinning out of control just before an attack every time I think about it, which is why they call it PTSD. So round and round I go. Just after returning home, I started to fall into a very deep depression with anxiety levels through the roof. Just after I broke my back for the second time in a car accident with a 3/4-ton yellow taxi van, I was told that I was being medically retired for depression, anxiety, and PTSD. When my wife of 20 years told me that she wanted a divorce so she could move back home with her pedophile father, it started a war that was really not fun. Because I lost everything. Because the Darkside was running this reality. And I learned that the courts in this country are ran by Satan, as the courts and police protected the pedophile. So after all I've been through, the news just kept getting worse. I had been diagnosed with a rare form of lymphoma. The bones in my back where I broke them twice. The top the first time, and bottom the second time. At the fifth lumbar, pushing against my spinal cord, causing neuropathy in my legs and feet, and also partially due to chemical contamination. I have skin and bone cancer from depleted uranium, or DU, which was used for helicopter weight and balance, which was not uncommon for me to put in my pocket, since they told us that paint will protect you from alpha radiation. But the DU in Kuwait got airborne from dust it left as a residue, and I came in contact with it from tanks that got hit by DU ammunition, and partially due to other chemical contamination I came into contact with, like sarin gas and mud. And I have DNA damage due to the anthrax vaccination. So I now have chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia syndrome, advanced deteriorating joint disease, and that is just for starters. My post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is way out of control, and my sleep study shows abnormal EEG and no REM sleep. And a rare sleep state misperception disorder, which is why I cannot distinguish my dreams from reality. So you can say that every day is a bad day for me. And after a few years of trying to work as a computer programmer for the government, I was permanently medically retired. But his story does not end here. In fact, it was then I decided I should tell his story. Like the phoenix, out of the ashes of my life I would be reborn. So death never bothered me. You can kill me, but I will never die. It's the living in pain part that bothered me. But I have my good days and my bad days. On a good day I got remarried back in 2000. I have nothing to complain about. Not that that stops me. I complain all the time. I am a Jew, and that is what Jews do. And it's why I hate Jews, because hate is like complaining. It's something you do because you feel compelled to do so. Because Jew type of behavior disgusts you to the point where you hate it. But when it's you that is the Jew, you hate yourself for being a Jew. And that is how you know you are a Jew. Because no one hates a Jew more than a Jew does. So it was not uncommon for me to want to check out with drugs or belt around my neck. Because there are times when I do not want to live this life. I do not want to have to explain it, as I'm doing now, because I know that I must take responsibility for everything I have done. So my wife has to put up with me being a Jew, complaining all the time, telling her that money is the root of all evil, which is life spelled backwards. So she has to put up with a wizard who cannot spell very well, because I have no interest in the English language. So I talk like a wizard. I have no idea if it's because I am an Aspie, or just because I am an Ashkenazi Jew, or if it's because I have a high IQ. And I think that all of you are just stupid sheep, and I keep repeating that you are stupid, because only you are smart enough to know that you are the light, and not the animal. A lesson all of you need to learn. So when I say you are stupid, I'm talking about the sheep, because they think that is who they are. I wonder what happens when they die. But the truth is, I never die. Only you do. So like the phoenix, I am always reborn back into you. I knew that at some point in my life I would have to tell his story. So it's why I went through all the motions, knowing that someday I would have to take responsibility for all my actions. And as an Admiral of the United States of America's militia, I have responsibilities to uphold the Constitution. But how do I protect something that has been gone for over 151 years? I cannot order another civil war, because that is what caused this whole mess. Nor can I order a stand down, because the United States is completely owned by the banks, and everyone working for the government works for the banks, and the police have always worked for the banks, and so did the military, but not the United States of America's militia. They are people who support the Constitution, and not the politicians who work for the bank, and not those that believe that the Constitution exists and was legally ratified to allow the banks to own it, because that is just stupid, and you would have to be completely insane to believe that. And everyone that tells you it is lying. But that is how the banks have kept this lie going for 151 years, because sheeple will believe whatever they are told. They need no proof. Mainstream news is all the proof you need. So I give no orders, and never will, because free will does not allow that. To be free, you must give up being dumb. So stop believing in freedom, because all I can do is show you the light, and it does not allow any bartering of any kind. That means no money, no paychecks, no gambling, no loans, no welfare, no interest, no ownership, no hunger, no homeless, no unemployment or disability, because everyone works. No voting, that is how you became slaves. So no slaves, and no crime. It's the place where nothing is for sale, and you pay for nothing. Everyone gets the same resources regardless of who they are, but everyone has to work for it to work. There can be no free rides. This is called responsibility. Most people cannot imagine living without money or some form of barter because they have never known true freedom, not even in their wildest dreams, because those born in the U.S. were raised to believe that communism was evil, even though there has been no true communism countries in thousands of years. Most countries claiming they are communists are actually dictatorships, but most of you know that the government lies to you about everything. Yet most of you buy into everything they say, so it's a paradox. Whereas I see no real difference between the government, churches, or banks who own them all. The ring of power is hidden in plain sight. Even the Bible states that money is the root of all evil, so only evil can come from money, and anyone dealing in money is evil, which is why most of you lie about money being the root of all evil, because once you go down that road, you know that it will only lead you to conclude that this whole world is evil and out of control. So you lie to yourself about everything and believe that God is just a deity and that money is what makes the world go around. So those who sold Jesus out for money are still doing so to this day, because Jesus said that only evil can come from money and would never use it himself. And I might point out that he was not a Christian any more than Allah was a Muslim. In fact, he spoke out against the church for using money. Try living without money nowadays and you will die. This proves to you how evil money is. But you are just female sheep, and you write,
"In God we trust."
on all your money, knowing that only the Dark Lord uses money because it's evil. So round and round we go. In a world that's sold out to profit, allowing those in charge to scam them out of their heritage, leaving them penniless in the street if they cannot pay the interest on their loan, unless they take the mark of the beast, which is a credit card, as long as you have a birth certificate, which is also used as collateral for the national debt. In the U.S., where we the people are taxed to death, when the Constitution we claim to defend fought against any taxation from the banks. Yet there are those that claim the Constitution was legally amended to allow the banks to print money, knowing that whoever prints the money owns the country. So these sheeple lie to themselves and others, because they are ashamed at being treasonous traitors, because they refuse to believe that President Lincoln was legally executed for treason, and the banks are the one that put him on a pedestal as honest Abe. So I wonder who is living in a dream world. So you go along with the lie that the Constitution is still alive and doing fine, knowing that you are guilty of treason if this is true. So you lie to yourself, when in fact it was permanently suspended till you pay back the loan, which is what you call the national debt, and it's impossible to pay it off. So you go into debt until the system crashes. Then you blame it on the politicians, because you do not want to take responsibility for your actions. And no matter how you try to defend your actions, it's still treason against the Constitution. So you will never change. You will lie about this to the bitter end. So you want to take me to court to prove that I'm wrong and you are right. But what is the point? the courts are guilty of treason. Do you really think they will admit that? The weather is changing, and that is a sign from God. It's called reality, and history proves that you are overdue for another ice age. And the fact is that it's coming. And the current infrastructure of the most advanced cities on this planet could not last a few weeks, let alone a few thousand years. So the human race is about to become extinct. As Sir Isaac Newton calculated that to be in the year 2060, just 46 years from now, because he knew that all of mankind could not come together and work on this problem together, because money would divide the people into groups, the have and the have-not. And because of money, the Great War will destroy the world, because profit has been put above the safety of the planet and all life on the planet. And it's why the Gulf of Mexico is allowed to bleed out into the ocean, which will start a chain reaction that will kill all life on this planet. And that is just a sign that you cannot afford to miss, nor can this be put off for 46 years while you figure out a way to pay for better cities. And if you pray to God to help you, God will tell you that God can only help those that can help themselves, because you are powered by God. But you are just stupid liars who do not even think that an ice age is a problem. Sanctuary is a pyramid, some standing 66 miles tall, like a stairway to heaven, making a 500-mile circle around it to be used for security and resources. It is fully self-contained and designed to provide all the needs of every living being on the planet. And it's owned by everyone on the planet, and not the banks. If the banks paid you to build it, you would only be building your own prison, which seems to be the only free housing in the U.S. And it's nothing but a slave labor camp for the rich businessmen and banks. So it's clear that the only way you can be free is to work for free. This is where the word freedom comes from. So everything in Sanctuary has to be free, including everyone's free will. So the ignorant ways of the Darkside must also be trained out of you. So you will know the true science of the universe and the truth about the evil ways of money. So not even Sanctuary can deal with money, not even to the Darkside, which is what I call the government. So a deal with the devil must be made. So you will give the Darkside all your excess power, food, and products. But the Darkside must give you freedom and allow you access to the resources you need to make the power, food, and products. And will only deal directly with those that supply resources, and never produce products for the war effort, since Sanctuary cannot supply the war effort in any way, with the exception of products that civilians have access to also. So it has to provide for the world, not the world's politics. Sanctuary must be a place where people can come together and work for a common goal, which is a society based on trust in God and not money, where religion, politics, and laws have no holds barred. The people in Sanctuary are not slaves to anyone. The community is self-regulating. A very strict code of honor is written into technical data and orders. It describes how to behave in every situation. There's a step-by-step instructions on how to do every job in Sanctuary. So it's a very structured pyramid. It has to be to last for millions of years. Greed starts with money and power. And in Sanctuary you have none of these things. No rights, no laws, only technical data and orders that describe what you are supposed to be doing. And every job needs someone to do it, so training is required. And some jobs that people do not like doing still need to get done, so the system has to be computerized for efficiency and full coverage. But for the most part, people can choose what jobs they can do. So a lot of services you take for granted, like medical, shopping, or ordering supplies online, and entertainment are still going to be there. But the goals will be to become more intelligent and push for higher technology to make life easier. You will build robots to build the pyramids, because once you get up in altitude, humans will not be able to build any higher. And also because you will have to pour billions of yards of concrete a day to finish this job on time. So Sanctuary is built on logic and science. In my dream, Sanctuary was created from all the details of other dreams. Layer upon layer, these dreams took on a life of their own. I can see a future where everyone is living in Sanctuary, which reaches into the heavens above. So what is done in heaven is done on earth, where healthy people live and work in harmony, where inventions are all open and free, because religion and money is no longer a motivational control mechanism used to control sheeple. And there are no state secrets. Sanctuary does not keep technology a secret. It shares this information with the world, along with all its excess power, food and products, to make it a better place to live, so that people can control their own destiny, and can build a paradise all the way up to heaven, because all resources are owned by all the people, and not just a few privileged elite classes, so that all of its citizens are afforded the same luxury as the others. So greed and crime are a thing of the past, and self-improvement inspired into everyone, so everyone can live the dream. And as everyone learns to speak one language and learn the same reality, so they can shape their future and really learn to live with others in harmony, and not just talk about it as if it was a fairy tale. But King Arthur returns with the wizard Merlin, even though I had this recurring dream. Even I know that some of my dreams are really just dreams. But Sanctuary is for real. People have been genetically programmed to build pyramids, and they have no idea why. Because our connection to God is through our atoms. And most of you do not comprehend your life at the atomic level. You are unaware of your cells, so you only act at the macro level of biology. Imagine that all the galaxies in the universe were just atoms in God, and the whole universe is God. I see a universe that can be explained in terms of science, and not science fiction. Because believe me, I have an IQ over 180, and I know that the static universe of the Light Wizzard, Isaac Newton, is the true science, and the dynamic universe of the Dark Wizard, Albert Einstein, is just science fiction. And at the subatomic level, I can prove that to be the truth. That is science, as is the light. And this is the same light the Bible talks about. But it's just in the levels of gray does any of this make sense to you. But most of you have an IQ lower than 130, so you cannot understand some of the science of the Light Wizard, because you believe in the science of the Dark Wizard, which is called science fiction. So you have to choose a side. Do you believe in the dark side, which is what 100% of all sheeple believe in, which is the dynamic universe, where you are just soulless animals? Or you believe in the light side, which believes that it's God, which goes by many names. But in the Trinary universe, it's I am the light, I am the darkness, I am every shade of gray in between. So it's at the science of the matter, and is not a deity or other mythological being. I could not dream of a universe that was not created by God. And yes, this is the same universe of Sir Isaac Newton. And everyone uses Newtonian math to create this modern society you live in today. And Sir Isaac Newton said that God was the force in all his math. And for the past 333 years, no one has proven him wrong. I view the world in black and white. If I say something is not very white, it's just a polite way of saying something is dark. Because if I say something is dark, as in evil, people get all upset. Not that saying it's white will make it any better, because then they will think I'm prejudiced. So it's only in the shade of gray that any of the things I say make any difference. Because the color of your skin has no meaning when it comes to the light. And I never talk about the color of one's skin in relationship to their soul, because only God is all light. I'm the light being. The darkness is just me. And all my dreams are in color, and are never what most of you view them as, because I live in another world. It's the only explanation for me seeing the universe in such a different light, and why it is I had the dreams I did just to survive, because I could not imagine living in a world as evil as this without doing something about it. Our family came here to fight for freedom. But in 1863, that freedom was taken away by the banks, and there is no denying that. Once the banks took over, the Constitution was over with. So why does the military require its members to take an oath to defend it, if they know you will never defend it? It's a game. It's not a game I like to play, because this game will take you around the board a few times, and you will always end up broke and in jail if you play the game long enough. So why play the game at all? It's evil, and nothing good can ever come from you. And all of you know this is the truth, because it's like voting for the lesser of two evils. You are still voting for evil. And this is how you became slaves to the system to start with. So the dreams that my family made come true are now gone, and our freedom is gone with it. If I do not do anything to try to fix this, then I am just as guilty of treason as all of you. So I am standing up to this whole world and saying, I want my freedom back. Some sheeple think that I imagine this whole story in my dreams, just so I could deal with the harsh reality of how evil this world is at this time. and that this had more to do with a bad upbringing than reality. I cannot count how many sheeple told me to just get over it. But the alternative is that I agree that I am nothing but a treasonous traitor for not defending the Constitution. And all those sheeple who do not see it this way are insane for not being able to cope with the reality of what they have participated in, which includes allowing the banks to own the United States and to pretend that the Constitution is still in existence, instead of the simple reality that the banks now own you and any country you live in, no matter where you live on this planet. And the New World Order is the bank, which controls you by religion and money, which are the same thing, just a way to control you and the root of all evil. And there's no way around this kind of thinking. Logic dictates that once you remove all the details that make up reality, whatever is left, no matter how impossible it might sound to you, must be the truth, which for me is this truth, that the banks own the world, and sanctuary is the only way to be free. So I dreamed about freedom and how to get it, and I set out to give freedom to you, and I do not care what you believe, nor does the universe, because you are just female sheep who believe that this system of government you live in may not be the best, but it's the best you can do, knowing that most of the population is in prison, either by the system they work for, or by incarceration for laws that make no sense. You go to church knowing that 95% of all the priests are pedophiles, yet you believe the religious and church-going people are the good people, and all the others are bad, and the Christians are the worst, since they know that Jesus did not want anything to do with the church. He said he would destroy it, and he would rebuild it in 3 days. In fact, it was the church who had Jesus executed. To talk about Judas selling Jesus out for money, the Christians wrote the book on that. They made Jesus a two-faced liar by inserting Christ into the Bible. This was proven by Sir Isaac Newton over 333 years ago. And you know the new Bible was written by Satan himself to enslave you.
Because as long as religion backs the dynamic universe, which states that God did not create the universe, making the Bible a lie, then you know Satan is in charge of the churches, and only satanic sheeple would belong to Satan.
And you are too scared to stand up to that system, because you know they will come and take you away. And you think I'm schizophrenic, when it's your reality that is in question. So I ask you just one question. Do you see it this way? As for me,
I am the light. I am the darkness. I am every shade of gray in between. I am the Light Wizzard in the flesh.